Israel and Hezbollah have agreed to a ceasefire, the terms of which are, we'll see. I don't know how long this is going to last.
It's supposedly a 60-day truce.
Yep. I mean, I don't know how long within that 60 days it's going to last. Yeah. This is, I don't know if this is a gift to Joe Biden or a gift to Donald Trump or just simply a way of Israel not having to confront maybe the issues they're having in fighting Hezbollah. But here is Joe Biden announcing that ceasefire.
Lasting security for the people of Israel and Lebanon cannot be achieved only on the battlefield. And that's why I directed my team to work with the governments of Israel and Lebanon to forge a ceasefire, to bring a conflict between Israel and Hezbollah to a close. Under the deal reached today, effective at 4 a.m. tomorrow local time, the fighting across the Lebanese-Israeli border will end. Will end. This is designed to be a permanent cessation of hostilities. What is left of Hezbollah and other terrorist organizations will not be allowed, well, I emphasize, will not be allowed to threaten the security of Israel again. Over the next 60 days, the Lebanese army and state security forces will deploy and take control of their own territory once again. Hezbollah terrorist infrastructure in southern Lebanon will not be allowed to be rebuilt. And over the next 60 days, Israel will gradually withdraw its remaining forces. And civilians on both sides will soon be able to safely return to their communities and begin to rebuild their homes, their schools, their farms, their businesses, and their very lives.
All right, we should be clear. You're talking about over 1 million Lebanese returning to their homes and 50,000 Israelis. Israel looked like they were carpet bombing Beirut in the hours leading up to that 4 a.m. Ceasefire.
They killed at least 3,800 people in Lebanon, leveled a whole residential apartment building as well.
And, the idea that this is, forged by Biden's team is obviously a joke. They were trying to forge some type of ceasefire, supposedly, working 24 hours a day, incidentally, for over a year, and couldn't forge that one. So it's probably more of an indication of Israel's lack of success and, frankly, having stretch themselves thin at this point.
It's unfortunately, I think, a win for Israel, at least in the short term, just because Hezbollah is the most capable fighting force that can confront them, short of obviously Iran, which would be insanely horrible regional escalation. But it's been, 14 months with Hezbollah basically launching rockets since October 7th, trying to support the people in Gaza, and basically now with this 60-day truce, the Hezbollah's attacks basically get to stop without them having to deal with the Gaza question, which was really the reason that Hezbollah had been launching those attacks as an act of resistance. And so that means that the Hezbollah attacks stop for a period without ending the Gaza genocide. And then the other part is that apparently Biden leaned on Emmanuel Macron to reverse publicly his proclamation that they would enforce in France the ICC arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, because Israel was demanding French involvement in the ceasefire deal. So they said, well, we can't be partners with somebody that would enforce the ICC arrest warrant, and so we won't agree to a Lebanon ceasefire unless they backtrack on that. And of course, Lebanon formerly controlled by France. And so Macron did it. And this sets a horrible precedent for even things, Putin's arrest warrant, right? Well, that's what Biden's essentially saying.
I want to play that clip, but I mean, let's be clear. Biden, in leaning on France too, and this was reported last week that Biden was upset with Macron, who was essentially doing what Tony Blinken said should be done a year ago in regards to Putin, which is if you're a party to the ICC, you need to uphold the ICC's warrants. And Biden, in leaning on Macron not to do this, not to uphold that warrant, to provide some type of special waiver or whatever it is, completely, I mean, I think to a large extent, obviously, or maybe totally, Biden's proclaimed return to international rules-based order was a joke. But to undermine the ICC, it's one thing to not be a party, but to actively work against its functioning in our world is going to resonate, I think, for decades. Here is Reuters reporter Simon Lewis asking spokesperson Matthew Miller why ICC rulings should be enforced against Russia and not Israel.
The secretary was, I think last year it was, where he was talking about the warrant for Vladimir Putin said, this was in Senate, said any country that's party to the court has obligations and should fulfill those obligations. So should countries' obligations to international treaties be sort of selective in this way?
No, every country has to make their decision. Every country has to make that decision for themselves. But I don't think there is any equivalence between the case that the ICC has brought against Russia and the case that it has brought against Israel. When you look at the difference between the two countries, Russia is not a democracy.
Pause it for 1 second. I just want you to just sit and go back a little bit. But just sit with the idea that there's no equivalency in these two cases. I'll tell you what the equivalency is that the ICC has gone through its very formal process in which it's assessed whether arrest warrants will be issued. The prosecutor pitches it essentially to the court. The court then makes a determination. And in fact, I think it was Britain that slowed the process down. It would have been a process that would have been resolved, I think, 6 months ago. But there is exactly an equivalency. And on one hand, the ICC is bringing charges against a leader for crimes against humanity. On the other hand, the ICC is bringing charges against a leader of a country who has committed crimes against humanity. That's what the equivalency is. Go ahead.
The case that the ICC has brought against Russia and the case that it has brought against Israel. When you look at the difference between the two countries, Russia is not a democracy, does not have a functioning independent legal system, is not investigating violations of international humanitarian law by its soldiers. Israel is the opposite in all of those cases, a democracy with an independent court system that has hundreds of open cases into allegations against its soldiers. It is important that those processes be allowed to proceed. That is the principle of complementarity under which the ICC was founded. Now, when it comes to countries making the decisions, they all have to make their own decisions in the same way that the United States has.
So one huge similarity between both Israel and Russia is that neither are members of the ICC, just like you.
Yeah, also correct. Also correct.
Okay, well, if they don't have jurisdiction over Israel, why should they have jurisdiction over
Ukraine is
Russia?
also not.
So Ukraine is not a member. Ukraine is a sovereign state, however, that has granted its jurisdiction to another country. I think it might have been Poland, another country, and allowed that country to intervene for them, which is something that sovereign states can do. There is no sovereign state of Palestine. We want to establish a Palestinian state.
You
but that
piece
is, that
of
is
garbage.
The fundamental nature of our jurisdictional disagreement with the court.
For sure.
What a Palestine is an ICC party. So it's actually more valid than the arrest. I mean, let alone just the death count should tell you how clear and obvious this arrest warrant is. But it's more valid because of Ukraine's, Palestine's.
As to who the victims,
yes.
as whether in a crime against humanity, what difference does it make whether these individual, I mean,
but even on the
you can have crimes against humanity brought against your own. The ICC can have charges against you for doing things to the people of your own country. It doesn't matter whether it's
I mean, it's all
sovereign or
fake,
not.
right? The phrase "there's no equivalence" is one they've been leaning on for months now. That doesn't mean anything. That's just, I'm not accepting what you're communicating. We're
Yeah.
done with this conversation. That's all that means. No equivalence. Like, I'm an English major. I don't know what the hell they mean by that.
It doesn't mean anything except for the fact
Well,
that
there
I
is
love
equivalence. There is exactly equivalence.
Right, exactly.
The ICC has determined through the same process that one party is warrants an arrest warrant, and another party warrants an arrest warrant. So there is an equivalence. There's an exact equivalence. In fact, there's probably one of the best equivalences you could have, which is a body that adjudicates whether there's equivalences.
Yeah,
That's
1-to-1.
Right. And they abandoned the jurisdictional argument. Did you see that, though? That was initially what the State Department was saying at these briefings, which was just like, Israel is not a party to the ICC, so there's no jurisdiction. But it's so paper thin. They're
Russia is
pathetic
not a party.
excuses
That's the
because
problem. Someone just
exactly. Thankfully, that Reuters reporter was able to nail that naked lying in front of our faces.
Hopefully, Israel's attention does not. I don't know. I guess the lack of distraction in terms of Hezbollah does not mean that they start to use those weapons on Gaza or increase the suffering there. But I wouldn't hold your breath. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.